The thing that I'm most proud of is making great leaders because at the end of the day, we get measured on business results. That's what we make. But you don't get those business results without inspired and motivating employees. And so for me, the best part was making great leaders, developing and growing talent.
Welcome to Women Who Make It, real conversations with women in the food and beverage industry who are building careers, leading teams, and figuring it all out. After years of building females in food, I've had conversations with some of the most brilliant women in the industry, and they shared the real stuff. The pivots, the boundaries, the burnouts, and the moments of, is this even working, before it finally clicked. So I hit record, and now you get to hear it too. We're Women Who Make It, so let's dig in.
Welcome to Women Who Make It. Real women, real talk, and the real stories of making it in the food and beverage industry. I'm Angela Dodd, the founder and CEO of Females in Food, and today I am so excited to be sitting down with Amy Abouelenein, a global innovation executive who recently retired as a vice president of international innovation, technology, and quality from General Mills after a 36-year career, which spanned 2 functions, 3 segments, and several iconic brands and multiple geographies. We're going to talk about the common thread in her career, the hard seasons, how she navigated internal politics, and saying yes before she felt ready. Let's get into it. Welcome, Amy. I'm so thrilled to have you here. And for our listeners who might not know you that well yet, tell us about yourself and, like the title of the show, what you made, what that means to you, whether it be teams, transformations, products. Excited to hear from you.
Thank you, Angela. Thank you so much for having me. So excited to be here today. So, as Angela mentioned, I just retired from General Mills after spending 36 consecutive years there. I joined right out of college with my degree in chemical engineering. And I would say made a lot over the course of those 36 years. I had the opportunity to work on so many iconic brands from Betty Crocker to Cheerios to Pillsbury to Haagen-Dazs and several others. Worked across all of our channels, retail, food service, e-com, shops, multiple geographies. I had an international role. So I was supporting all of our product development efforts around the world, which was amazing opportunity. I also had roles where I was making capabilities and organizations and creating teams. And I would say the thing that I'm most proud of is making great leaders because at the end of the day, we get measured on business results. That's what we make. But you don't get those business results without inspired and motivating employees. And so for me, the best part was making great leaders, developing and growing talent.
That's amazing. And what a legacy to be leaving all those incredible leaders still at the company and charging the course forward. As you look back over those 36 years, what do you feel like is the common thread that really links all the steps in your career?
So as I think about my career, I had 14 different roles. And so that spanned a couple of different functions. I worked in engineering. I worked in R&D. I worked within different parts of R&D, business-facing roles, capability roles. So I was always kind of doing like cross-functional moves. I was doing new things. And so I think one of the threads was stepping into new, really getting out of my comfort zone and getting into a place of discomfort. But I would also say a big part of it was relationships, developing trust in relationships up, down, and across. And I do think that was a critical thread that allowed me to sort of thrive as long as I did at General Mills, was just that element of collaborating, understanding the stakeholders, meeting their needs. At the end of the day, yes, you have to deliver the results. It's definitely about the what and the consistency and be able to do that. But the how matters a lot and is critical, as you know. And so I think that was one of the threads as well, is really figuring out how to lead others to get results.
Yeah, I love that. And we're going to be digging into that more here in just a second because there's a lot of politics to talk about and how to navigate that. And the how is, as you said, critical to being able to have a successful career for that long and making it to the top. So I'm going to come back to that topic.
Okay.
But as we move forward, so many of our listeners and so many women in this community are mothers too, right? And
Yes.
working the 9 to 5 is not the only job that we have. And there's a lot to balance. I'm in the thick of it right now, right? With 2 little toddlers. Can you share a season when motherhood and leadership collided, and what did you change that stuck for you? I think so many are looking for
Yeah.
that
Yeah. So, a
reflection.
couple things. So, I had two kids during the course of my career, and each time I was lucky enough to take 16 weeks of maternity leave and transition to a new job. So, was really nice that I didn't have to worry during that 16 weeks off of what I was missing and how I was falling behind because I ended a role and then I was stepping into a new role. But one of my most challenging seasons, and I should mention, we didn't have any family here. My family lived in Egypt. My husband's family lived in Wisconsin. My husband and I both, working kind of demanding jobs with
Yeah.
travel and things like that. And so we had no local support. And so there were kind of two things that stand out to me when there was a time in my career where my kids were 2 and 5 and I was stepping into my first director role. And my manager could see like I was struggling, like how to balance it, how to keep up with email, how to keep up with the job, how to balance my demands at home. My husband was traveling a lot and he hired a getting things done coach for me that helped me. That's based on the David Allen book.
Yeah.
They had coaches you could hire that would help you with productivity, how to manage your inbox, how to manage your tasks, how to manage your time. And that was invaluable for me because it really helped me kind of step change how I thought about work. Because when you do have kids, your priorities do change. You
Yeah.
have to put things in a different perspective. And I was trying to figure out how to be a good mom, but also realize my career ambitions because those didn't go away the minute I had a baby. And so that part is challenging to navigate. And so having a manager who recognized that I needed help and provided that resource for me was key. And then, of course, when my kids were at an age where I needed support, that we had a nanny who came,
Yeah.
for the day, would help with, cooking
All the
and rides
things.
and all of the things. But it was really important because we did not have any local family to help us out. But it was challenging, and you do learn that there are times in your career when life leads with life and you need to prioritize that, and times when life leads with work and you need to prioritize that. And I think as I look back now on my 36-year journey, it was a long journey. I was playing the long game. And so you just, learn to kind of figure out that, work will ebb and flow, life will ebb and flow. And General Mills did a great job supporting mothers and people like me during those hard seasons when, it was tough to juggle it all.
That's incredible. You don't hear that very often, by the way, managers who recognize, that you're struggling and then being able to invest and help with that as a tool, right? Like you're not failing here. We just need to give you a different
Yes,
toolkit to navigate this new path in
for
life.
sure.
And
It's great.
I can resonate so deeply with that because the emails are real. Like I think that's the one thing where I feel like I'm failing every day is like,
Yeah.
how do I get through all these emails? Like, it just never stops. And it's critical, right, to keep up with business needs and what's going on. And, but your priorities, it's, trying to log off at 5:30 to be there for dinner and bath and trying to find the energy to get back online at 9 or 10.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
tough. And the other piece of this that you said, when we think about what that support system looked like for you, in today's age, we talk about the super mom, right? And to me, it doesn't exist without the other people. And I think recognizing when it looks like somebody is doing everything to realize a lot of times they have outsourced and brought in help to
Yes.
make it
Yes. Yes.
so
Easier.
much more efficient. And I think acknowledging those support systems is really powerful. So we don't portray this image that we're doing it all and have
Yes.
to do it
Yes.
all,
You
right? It
can't.
takes a village.
It does take a village for sure. 100%.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, so now we're going to pivot away from motherhood and start going back to navigating those internal politics. We all know every company has these unwritten rules
Yes.
and they're really hard. Nobody tells you at the beginning what they are unless you're really fortunate to have a great mentor or sponsor, but what ones did you have to learn so that you could really truly move ahead and advance? And I know earlier you talked about that how in relationships and would love for you to dig in a little bit further into that.
Yeah, sure. I did at General Mills. That was a very relationship based culture. And so spending the time to get to know the people you're working with, build trust, build those connections, build your network was critical because everything we do is a team sport. You don't get your job done alone. And so it's really important that you're creating those coalitions, you're finding out who those allies are, that you are developing those relationships so that you are establishing yourself as a valued business partner. So I'd say that's number one. And then two, I would say figuring out who your stakeholders are, who are the key decision makers, who are the people that you need to influence, also is an unwritten rule because sometimes it's not always clear who that is. And then I would say the third area for me was really about how do you add value? Because I think at the end of the day, people want to, if you want to be in one of those people that I want that person in the boat, you're going to be a person who is adding value. And I had a manager early on in my career tell me that the sign of a good employee is someone who takes things off your plate, meaning
Mm.
I want somebody who's proactive, is taking the initiative, and is not coming to me with problems to solve, like, hey, boss, can you help me? No, somebody who's taking things off your plate. And that stuck with me because when I think about now, when I was the leader, like I value the people on my team who are solving problems proactively. Hey, I took care of this, I anticipated that. And so
Yeah,
to me, that was a quote that really stuck
love
with
that.
me when she said that to me, because I do think, I think we all aspire to be that person that, hey, if I had to choose a person to bring in the boat with me, this is the
Yeah.
person because they add value. And so that was, I think, another unwritten rule that I think if you could establish yourself as someone like that, you could go far.
Yeah, I think that's such a good tactical point of or that takeaway of like, what does that
Yeah.
look like day to day? And it's taking
Yeah.
initiative. It's informing your boss before they ask for the information. It's anticipating the need.
Yes.
And I think
Yeah.
about that so often in just even my household. I'm like, would somebody just anticipate my needs and do that for me?
Right.
That I'm like, you have demonstrated so much value. And that goes, yeah, beyond work, in your home life, in the community, with your teachers, right? Like with your kids'
Right.
teachers, all of it. I
Right.
think we're all looking for that,
Yes.
how are people in our lives and that translates so much into the workspace and when people are asking who's going to be coming along for that ride and it
Yeah.
makes it really easy to say this person.
Right.
I love that. Such good advice. I'm curious because in all of our careers there will be times in which some of our listeners are not, the shining star in the room. And there
Yeah.
will be skeptics in the audience, right? There are going to be
Oh, totally.
people in the audience throwing criticism our way. When's a time when you had to turn a skeptic into an ally? And what specifically changed her mind? How did you do that?
I have a great example of that. So I started my career in engineering, spent
Mhm.
2 years there, and then I went to R&D and I spent 12 years in R&D. And after that 12 years, a leader in engineering called me up and said, hey, want you to come back to engineering. That was like a cross-functional move. You should come back. And offered me a position as the director of the controls and information systems group. And this was a group that was responsible for plant floor information systems for all of our manufacturing plants and all the electrical engineering that went into capital projects. Mind you, I just spent, 12 years doing product development. I hadn't had a controls class since college, and he was asking me to come in and be the director. I was met with not a skeptic, a team of 30 skeptics because I was brought in to lead this group of 30, mostly male, electrical engineers and computer scientists and to set the direction and strategy for all of our plant floor information systems. So they were skeptical. They're like, why are you bringing somebody in from R&D? She doesn't have the subject matter expertise. And so it was tough. It was a tough environment. And what I learned and did through that role was show them that, look, you are the subject matter experts. I'm not going to get into the technical detail. So you do what you're good at. I'll
Yeah.
do what I'm good at, which is managing stakeholders, trying to set the strategy. I created kind of a trusted advisor group of people who could advise me on the technical details so that I could make good decisions. I will focus on career development because they were so frustrated that nobody internally was ready to be this director of controls, that they had to bring somebody in from R&D. And I think that's because we didn't have a strong, career development program. So I worked on the technical ladder. I worked on the path. And so I think by the end of that 3 years, they saw my strengths and what I was brought in there to do, but they were super skeptical. And, I had the benefit of knowing that my manager was supportive and wasn't going to put me in a role where I could fail and that I had strengths that I could bring and then, also leverage what they do best. And so I think I turned them around during the course of my 3 years, but It
A
was,
hard audience to
really,
turn,
like,
though.
really hostile kind of environment, like, I was younger than all of them. I was a female, like, it was challenging, but honestly, it was a great assignment. I loved it. I grew a lot. I think they grew to respect what I did, and of course, I learned a lot in the process.
I have to imagine, though, during those times, like, especially in those first 6 months or a year, those imposter feelings, right, got
Oh,
loud.
totally,
It
totally.
What was your in the moment reset? Like, was it your manager who kinda was pulling you out and kinda giving you that coaching and reassurance along the way, or was there other people or things that you
Yeah,
did to
it's a
help yourself?
it's a combination of things. I think first I have to remind myself, like, what have I accomplished? What are my experiences? What is the impact I've had? Like,
Yeah.
why am I here? And just kind of that objective assessment of I'm here for a reason and I do have strengths. Definitely relying on your manager and mentors and peers, like, hey, give me some perspective here. And, and I leverage that kind of trusted board of advisors to help me gain confidence in why I was there. But my manager was really critical because I knew he wasn't going to let me fail. And he was
Yeah.
really supportive around this is why you're here. And so just, getting that constant sort of reinforcement and was super critical, I think, to me
Yeah.
feeling comfortable in the moment. But it was not easy. I would say it was definitely challenging.
Definitely a stretch role. Would you say that was of the times when you think about when you had to say yes before you were ready, would you say that was one of your first, and was there many more after that?
It definitely was because I think at the time I was offered that position, my R&D leader also said, "Well, if you don't take that, I'll make you a director in R&D." And at the time I said,
Oh,
"I think this is going to be a bigger stretch." And so I took the role, but I was definitely not feeling ready for it. But I think again at the same time, like I feel like General Mills, I mean, if my manager who put me into that role had confidence that I could succeed, I wasn't going to let him down.
yeah.
I was gonna prove to him that he made a good choice. And so I do think some of that provides that internal motivation too to say, okay, if
Absolutely.
he thinks I can do it, like I better believe I can do it too. And sometimes that happens, right? People see things in us that we don't see in ourselves. And I think that was one of those situations. And, like I said, I'm glad I did it. It was hard, but I was glad I did it.
I love that. We can all do hard things, right? And I always one of the things I live by is we can all do hard things, fill in the blank for 6 months, for a year, for 2
Yes,
years. And
yes,
I
yes.
remember when I was asked to move to Minneapolis in a role and I'm not sure how I felt about the role in general. I'm like, it was a 2-year commitment that they were asking me. I could do anything for 2 years.
Right,
It's by the
right.
time you get in, learn it, start excelling. And I've always found that helps when I put that at the back end of that sentence. I can
Yeah,
do anything
yeah,
for it's good advice, and good to have those people in the corner. So, over the course of your career, if we kind of look
yeah.
at, you moved out of that role, you've taken on global roles. The hardest 6 to 12 months of your career, is there a time that stands out of like, this was really beyond motherhood, beyond the big transitions? And what do you think triggered it? What actually worked to kind of move you out of it? Because I think we all have those seasons that
Yeah.
this is kind of a really dark 6 to 12 months.
Well, honestly, it was that role. It was the biggest stretch, I was going from
Yeah.
something known to unknown. I didn't feel like I had the expertise. Like, up to that point, when I was leading others in work that I had done myself before. So it's a lot
Yeah.
easier to coach and lead and provide guidance when I was the product developer. I developed bars, I developed cereal. So it was easier
Yeah.
for me to coach people on that. But in this role where I didn't have the subject matter expertise, it was very uncomfortable. And so to me, that was probably the hardest. I did other cross-functional moves. I went into a group where I was managing long-term technology development. That was really uncomfortable for me because I had a
Yeah.
lot of really, really deep technical experts. They were all way smarter than me. And I was leading this team. So there have been moments, but I think the
Yeah.
hardest was this transition because it was just so foreign to me. And it was a
Yeah.
space I just was not comfortable in at all.
Yeah.
And so I had to lean on different skills and develop new muscles that I, didn't know I had, frankly.
Yeah.
And I developed them during that time. But for sure, by far, that was the hardest.
Those uncomfortable spots definitely makes you flex those muscles and stretch them in ways you didn't know was possible. Let's stay on this topic, but kind of move into over 36 years, you developed a playbook, I have to imagine. And I always say, if we could just take and steal, borrow, share a page out of somebody's playbook. I'm wondering, as you moved into some of those new cross functional environments, what were some of the first three moves that you took to drive results in relationships?
The first thing I think is getting clear on what success looks like. Like, what am I here to do?
Exactly.
Right. I had a manager once, and I loved her saying, she always would say, got to know when to have the party. Right. Like, what does success look like? When do we get to have the party?
Is it time to pop the champagne yet?
Exactly, right? So what does that look like? So knowing what
Yeah.
success looks like, I think is number 1. Number 2 is knowing the team. Spend the
Mm.
time, create the relationships. We talked a lot about the importance of that. Develop the trust, develop the relationships. That is super critical. You're not going to be successful if you walk in there and you're not getting to know the people and who they are and what they need and how to motivate them. So to me, that's number 2. And then the third part is just listening and learning. Like when you come into a new role, which I did 14 times, you don't know anything. And I made a
Right.
mistake early on in my career. Remember, I was a product developer in cereal. And, General Mills was a cereal company for a long time. So
Yeah.
we had very established processes. And I went from cereal to snacks. And snacks was a little bit of the wild, wild west. They didn't follow all the same internal practices. And I remember going in there and going, well, in cereal, we did this. And of course, that was like the worst thing to say. Nobody wanted to hear that. And so I think going in and listening and learning and observing and asking questions versus coming in like I know all the answers and like not the right approach. So
Yeah.
to me that those are kind of the first 3 things is just get clear on what success is,
Yes.
get
Know
to
the
know the
team.
team, listen
Yeah.
and learn.
Listen and learn. Go in with an open head, open heart. Yeah. I think
Yes.
that's very important reminders. And, as we kind of come to our close of this session, I want to for the listeners who are maybe in that messy middle right now,
Yeah.
what's one action you want them to try this week?
So there's a lot of different ways to think about that, right? If you're in the
Mhm.
messy middle, sometimes you're overwhelmed, right, with all the things that you have to do. So maybe it's sitting down and taking a look at your to-do list and
Yeah.
prioritizing what's the one thing that's going to move the dial, and I'm going to focus on that. That's one kind of way to think about it. The other thing that I think sometimes when you're in the messy middle, you're lacking confidence, right? That you can do it. And so I always like to tell people to try something new, create a new connection. I used to tell people like to ask themselves this question: when is the last time you tried something for the first time?
Mm,
Right? Because
yeah, I
it's
love
a little
that.
bit of that, because what I find is when you try something
Conquer.
new and you do it, it breeds confidence, right?
Yeah.
And when you breed confidence, then you're more unstoppable, right? You can tackle the messy middle and all the things that are challenging. And so sometimes we don't want to take the time to do that, but I do think when you
Yeah.
try something new and you're like, "Oh wow, I can do
And check
this."
it off.
That
Yeah.
that confidence can help you kind of then get the momentum that you need to
Yeah.
go tackle the rest of the things that are challenging.
Yeah, that is I love that piece of advice and so easy to forget when you're overwhelmed.
Yes.
Just,
Yeah. Yeah, take a
either stop
pause.
and take a pause, stop and prioritize, or like how do we build that confidence back up and go do something and see yourself succeed?
Right, right,
'Cause we
right.
can do the hard things. All right. Well, I have one last fun thing for us to do.
Okay.
These are quick hitters, right? This is lightning round, immediately what comes to mind questions for you as right before we close out. So, what's one boundary that changed your week?
So, now that I'm retired or when I was working?
I think when you were working.
Yeah. When I was working, so I had an international job. So I had early mornings and the potential for late evening calls. And the boundary that I created for myself was I was going to limit all of my calls with Asia to Wednesday evening because I didn't want every evening to be kind of chopped up by a call at 7 or 8 or 9
Yeah.
p.m. So I tried to stack all my meetings on Wednesday evening. So that way I had the rest of my evenings clear,
Yeah.
and I dedicated that evening. But that always made it easier because then I knew like what nights I was free. Wednesdays were kind of reserved for that. And that always changed. that
Uh,
helped me a lot.
and predictability to be able to have that
Yeah,
balance on the other nights with friends and family. I love that.
definitely.
What's a question that you would ask to skip over surface level conversation and get to the truth?
Yeah, and I liked meeting with people in my organization at all levels. And so I would always ask, like, what is leadership doing that is slowing you down? Like,
Mm.
what's not working? What are the barriers we can remove? And people were always honest, with and especially, we would do climate surveys and we would get a lot of rich verbatims out of that. But I think those one-to-one conversations, especially after you've established the relationships and the trust and the credibility that people will felt comfortable opening up, is
Yeah.
tell me, what is leadership doing that is, driving you crazy or is slowing us down?
What a powerful question. Yeah. And then to be open to the response, right?
Yes, yes, and
Love
act on it.
and
Not
act on
just
it.
not just listen to it, like,
You
do
gotta
something with it.
you gotta be willing to address it.
Nobody's gonna share their feedback if it just falls on deaf ears.
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. I think
yep,
that puts a powerful but vulnerable position as a
yep,
leader to be able to
yep.
really enhance the culture and build those relationships, but actually do something about it. Love that. Okay. A practiced podcast book that actually moved the needle this year for you.
So, I started meditating in the last year, and what I found with meditation, because I was like, "Oh, that's woohoo," like, I don't know if that's not I'm not into that, but it actually is, I feel like, helped me build resilience.
Mm.
And it helps with kind of clarity and problem solving and productivity. And so spending a couple minutes every day doing meditation has been really powerful for me. I remember even last year I was traveling and I had horrible trip. Missed my connection. I ended up like flying to two
Oh,
extra airports. It was a lot of fun business trip, but in the past, that would give me a lot of anxiety and all of
yeah.
this, and I actually credit the fact that I handled it in stride due to the fact that I was meditating and I was more resilient, and I'm like, it's fine, I'll get there eventually." Like, to me, I think meditation is something that maybe is under-leveraged by a lot of people.
Yeah. I love that so much. In the last year for me too, mindfulness, meditation, whatever you wanna call it,
Yes.
it is a very underleveraged tool to use in those situations to really address those
Yeah.
anxious feelings that can bubble up so quickly. What advice do you ignore and why?
Oh, when I was in leadership, I think the biggest advice was, like, don't show weakness. Like, you're a leader. And, right, we are sort of maybe trained to say we need to exude confidence and we need our teams to not show us in times of uncertainty, right?
Mhm.
And I think we've evolved to say, look, you build more trust and credibility when you're vulnerable and you share what you don't know. Like, we don't
Human.
have all the answers, right? And we
Yeah.
might be anxious about kind of the business as well. We don't like to show that because, again, we don't want our teams to feel like, oh, we know what we're doing and we're confident in the direction and all of that, or I know all the answers. But I think it's still tough for some
Yeah.
leaders to do that. Honestly, I don't think that's been mastered by everyone, but I do think it's advice to ignore, which is don't show weakness. Like, we need to show that we're human. And
Human.
I think it also breeds more trust and openness and vulnerability from your team
Yeah.
when you
Authenticity.
admit
Yeah.
your mistakes or admit what you don't know, or yeah,
I
what's
love that.
best to
Yeah.
you.
As a last question, what's next for you?
Oh, well, great question. I am now kind of enjoying the transition, taking time for myself, spending time with friends and family, getting back into some hobbies, definitely traveling, got some trips planned. But having said that, I am still wanting to make sure I stay connected to the food industry,
Yeah.
CPG, through either advising or consulting or partnering on new ventures, just where I can add value is what I'll be looking to do. But I'm definitely enjoying the pause right now, but we'll be
Enjoy the
anxious
pause.
soon to get
You've
back.
earned that break.
Yeah, I don't want
And
to
you've
get too
also earned the
comfortable.
retirement too, but,
Yes, yes,
I always say the first retirement, and then you kind of get to choose where you wanna invest your time and
right,
energy after
right,
that.
right,
I love
right.
that.
Build my portfolio, so it'll be fun. It'll be really fun.
Well, tell listeners where they can reach you, especially those
Yeah.
that may be looking for an incredible consultant or fractional expert to come into their company.
Well, you can
Um,
definitely find me on LinkedIn at Amy Abouelenein. That's probably the best place to find me. I am still toying with this idea because I'm experimenting. I'm actually reading a really great book right now that my daughter gave me called Tiny Experiments. But I am experimenting with Instagram, and I created a handle called Next Chapter Amy, where I'm trying to
oh,
document a little bit of my journey around navigating this transition. So we'll
I
see
love
long
that.
I keep that up because it's really out there for me to kind of put myself out there. But
Yeah.
that might be kind of fun. So those are the two places, but LinkedIn or Instagram.
You'll have a new follower right after this
There you
recording.
go. There you go.
I love that. What a great and I'll have to look into that book as well. Well, this is the real stuff, and I so appreciate you coming on today, Amy, and just sharing your journey, the
Sure.
decisions, the trade-offs, and the plays we can actually use. This is what helps the next generation, make better choices, more informed choices, and to help people navigate through the messy middle, as we call it. So, really want to thank you. Thank you for being here today and sharing.
Thank you. It was great. Great to be with you and great to see you as always. Thanks,
Yeah.
Angela.
And if you guys are new here and you're not part of our community or you don't know about Females in Food, we invite you to join our global community of women in the F&B industry. Visit femalesinfood.community and be sure to follow us on LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube at femalesinfood.community for when all of our new episodes drop. We're not just making food, we're making moves. We're women who make it. We'll see you next time.